Yeah.
Many months ago, Chris asked me if I would look at the texts of Jeremiah and possibly produce some work. This I did, and I remain grateful to Chris, not only for his patience, but also for giving me the opportunity to come out of retirement, as it were. Now, the plate that you have seen on the video sums up my feelings towards church, the fact that I have now got friends here and what friendship does. So I hope that will continue for some time now. I'm also extremely grateful for my wonderful family and the fact that they too have been extremely patient whenever I've undertaken this work. Now, I tried to visualize Jeremiah, and I suppose I have got an advantage here in the sense that nobody on earth knows what he looked like. So I'm starting with a blank sheet, and hopefully the results are pleasing. I think what portraiture is remains the governing conundrum. Many assume, particularly with the iPhone at the moment, that it's simply enough to put the likeness of a person onto a sheet. But I think portraiture goes way beyond that, and it's not enough just to have likeness. You need, in fact, to go beyond that. And when we look at the great portrait painters, Rembrandt, think of Van Gogh, think of Albrecht Dürer, and more recently it's been a revelation from the exhibition at the National Gallery of Gauguin. He really is a first-rate portrait man, but not a portrait person in the sense of getting an actual likeness. So with that in mind, I've tried to look, and I hope that this is reflected in the head of Jeremiah as he's going through his very anguished life, from taking on the responsibility at a relatively young age to the despair of and anger of middle age, to finally have redemption. And you'll see that in the triptych that's going to come up shortly. Alan Davey, really brilliant Scottish painter, talked about ancient art, and he talked about ancient art having a specific inner content. At one time, art possessed the same purpose that books do in our day, namely to preserve and transmit knowledge. In olden days, people did not write books. They incorporated their knowledge into works of art. And we will find a great many ideas in the works of ancient art which had been passed down to us, but if only we knew how to read them. I've been fascinated recently by looking at examples of cave art and the way in which people have needed to make their mark, maybe some 40,000 years ago, quite often making marks on the wall. As a result, we think of chewing things like charcoal and then spitting that mixture out onto the wall, and so getting their hands there for all time. The tree which is a symbol at Elmwood again impressed me when I first came here. The graphics that you have around the place, on the screen and all the rest of it, really impresses me. And I was thinking that it might be nice to reflect the tree in some way, and that is why I have made the tree from wire and stones to go into that space its own orb. The tree produces a shimmering pentagon, and that pentagon, in fact, is something that is very, very special in terms of proportion. We recognise proportions through the Italian mathematician Fibonacci and other people. We recognise these God-sent proportions, which are so absolutely wonderful. And that comes out in the pentagon quite nicely. So that is why it's simple arithmetic in that example. And as we move towards the tree again and all the philosophy that you have in that tree, I have in the past constructed a cabinet which you will see in this small exhibition, and that small cabinet is coming in the form of a triptych into which I've placed paintings of Jeremiah at different stages of his life, and I've tried to show them in the manner of Dürer, Michelangelo and El Greco. You'll see in some parts that I have the equivalent of a verb in the first wing of the triptych. For example, at the base of the picture we have the past, some of the rich patterning which we can't decipher really, then the present where Jeremiah is standing with an element of reverence in the book, and maybe I can draw attention to the fact that I've painted a piece of paper onto the floor of the triptych on the ground near to Jeremiah, and that has got a small inscription which denotes 2 psalms. It might be interesting to know if people were given the choice of 2 psalms, which 2 they would choose. On the one hand, I've chosen a psalm which states, "God have mercy on us." And in the second psalm, we have the words of worshipping God in so many different ways, which I think is what Chris is trying to encourage. So there are so many people in the congregation who have skills, and it would be lovely if those skills could come out and we could worship, not necessarily in the conventional way. Part of our makeup as people who are supposedly artists is our imagination. And I think we get that as Homo sapiens from generations past. And part of that imagination allows us to think along certain lines. And so I would ask you to imagine that children, rather like the famous 5, have been out into the woods and brought back something like that. It's a simple bird's feather, but upon closer examination you can see that there are elements of gold there. So you might say, oh well, we'll go out into the woods and see what we can find. And so in the woods we may come across a nest, beautifully engineered by this bird of the imagination, and then we may discover something of the remnants of eggs. Again, aesthetically, we look at the eggs and think what a magnificent shape, form that is, and we thank our Lord for the fact that He allows us to enjoy those things. I have a personal prayer, and that prayer goes out several times in the day. It should be prefixed with, "Dear Lord, you grow in me this delight, soft as the sound of music, subtle as the sound of music, soft as the sight of flowers, colouring clear air." And I feel blessed in the sense that I can go out and enjoy so many of these things, which is a gift, a real gift to me. Now, within these eggs, I've been thinking in terms of what sort of bird is it? It's rather like the unicorn. Nobody has ever seen this particular bird, but I think we could build a story around it. And this bird has got wings, and those wings are very special. And in one wing you have knowledge. And so we notice there's some evidence, we might call it DNA or something like that, but there is evidence in the egg of lots of complicated drawings, theories, and all the rest of it. So that is on the inside that wing. So knowledge is installed in there. And then in another, we have the poems of Blake, who was full of compassion, a very devout man, full of love. And in there we have gentle poems. So we could add another thing to another wing of the bird, and that is compassion. So when we have knowledge and compassion on the wings, then the wings will lift this golden bird. But I think we should change its name to the wisdom bird, because when you have those components in the wings, they will lift and the bird becomes a wisdom bird. Again, the bird lays its eggs on these beautiful mats, which have got prehistoric patterns, which you can't yet decipher, but hopefully this will come about. In conclusion, and I'm looking forward very much to talking to people, if you can spare the time after the service. And it gives me great pleasure to include 2 items in the exhibition, one of which is a textile which was brought back from the last trip to Ethiopia. And within that textile there are some special elements of weaving, and within, on the outside of the triptych, you'll notice that I have included an Ethiopian cross. This is really quite deliberate, because I think, and I'm hoping that this will happen, that someone will inform the craftsmen out in Ethiopia that their work has been included within our small exhibition. So we think of the man who's working on a table loom and has produced the lovely edges to the textiles. We think of the man who's working away as a silversmith and produced the lovely crosses. And we realise that we are all one, and no matter what part of the planet we live, we enjoy the inclusive nature of our being.